Hey guys, Sue's here. Welcome back to another Keto Dinner Ideas video. We film these every single week and try to cover 4 different keto recipes each time to give you a little motivation to get in the kitchen and get your keto meal prep on. If you're new here, please hit that subscribe button and join the crew. Let's get into the video. First up, I made these awesome caramelized onion and bacon smothered pork chops from All Day I Dream About Food. So to start with, in a large skillet over medium heat, I added 6 slices of bacon that I just chopped up roughly. I'm just going to fry this until it all starts getting crunchy. And once it does, I'm just going to scoop it out with a slotted spoon and make sure I leave the bacon grease in the skillet and just add that to a little metal prep bowl. Now I'm going to add my onions. The recipe called for 2 small onions thinly sliced, but I just used a half of a large red onion and then what I could get off of a small white onion that I had. It's really hard for me to even get my hands on onions that are decent right now. Then I added 1/4 teaspoon salt and 1/4 teaspoon pepper directly to the onions, and I'm going to stir these and cook them down until they are soft and browned. I did pop a lid on there to help with that. And once those are looking like I wanted them, I'm scooping those also out of the pan and putting them on top of the bacon as well. Now for the pork chops, I have these 4 kind of thick bone-in chops. I already put some salt and pepper on that side. I'm gonna lay them in seasoning side down. I did cut my pan up to medium-high heat for this, and I'm just gonna give them a really good sear for a few minutes on each side. And I'm actually going to, change the recipe up a little as always, and I'm going to finish mine in the oven. So I am preheating my oven to 350, adding salt and pepper on this side as well. And again, that's why I'm not worried about my meat being super crammed in this pan like a game of Tetris. Here I am flipping those and trying to arrange those back in so I can get a sear on the other side. And I'm just taking a glass casserole dish and removing those to it, and I'm gonna pop those in the oven for probably about another 15 minutes while I finish the recipe. I also have some cauliflower rice steaming in the microwave, and I'll season that with some butter and salt and pepper when it comes out. So I'm gonna deglaze the pan and cut it back down to medium, and I'm adding a 1/2 cup of chicken broth to it and bringing that to a nice simmer, and then adding 1/4 cup heavy cream. And I'm also gonna bring this to just a lightly bubbling simmer so it can thicken up a tad. And once it does, I'm gonna add back in my onions and bacon and give those a good stir until those are all nice and mixed in well. And then here it is all plated up. Like I said, I just put the pork chop over the steamed cauliflower rice that I seasoned with butter and salt and pepper. And then I put my caramelized onions, bacon cream sauce on top of that. This was so good. And really, it looks a little bit more complicated than it was. The worst part was probably chopping the raw bacon. But other than that, it came together super quickly and was also really good leftover. Next up, I made this awesome keto chicken pesto cauliflower casserole. This is adapted from a recipe from I Breathe, I'm Hungry. To start with, I took 2 12-ounce bags of frozen cauliflower. I steamed them in the microwave, and I'm adding them to this large prep bowl. And then on top of that, I am adding 4 ounces of cream cheese, and then I'm just kind of trying to break that up some just so that it can melt easier in this hot cauliflower. To that, I'm adding my seasoning blend of 1 teaspoon kosher salt, 1/4 teaspoon black pepper, 1/2 teaspoon garlic powder. And then I'm gonna mix that all around until my cream cheese is nice and melted and all of my cauliflower is fully coated. Then I'm adding my chicken to this. I did add 3 cups of cooked diced chicken, and as always, I just cooked it in my Instapot really quickly. on the poultry setting for 30 minutes and then chopped it up. If you don't have an Instapot, you could even just do your chicken in your crock pot all day, and then when you get ready to prepare this, you could just chop it up really quick at night. I'm adding some pesto sauce to this. I'm using 1/3 of a cup, and this is just some that I had left over from a previous recipe, but always look for the lowest carb pesto sauce. On top of that, I added 1/4 of a cup shredded Parmesan cheese, mixed that all together, and then I just grabbed a 9x13 baking dish, plopped it all in there. I didn't worry about spraying the dish or anything since the pesto has lots of olive oil in it, and spread it out evenly. And then I'm topping it with 1/2 cup shredded mozzarella cheese, and I'm popping this into a 375-degree oven for 20 minutes. Here it is out of the oven. And here it is all plated up. This was super good, super simple, and it's stored and reheated great. So it's perfect for doing keto meal prep. And it's one of those recipes that almost gets better left over because the flavors have more time to marinate together. Next up, if you've been a subscriber for a while, you know I usually like to do at least one kind of fat kid recipe. This week we're doing a take on Kendra Holly's cheesy pepperoni pizza pinwheels. So to start with, I'm mixing my dry ingredients together. I have 1/4 of a cup almond flour and 3 tablespoons coconut flour. And to that, I'm adding a seasoning blend of a teaspoon onion powder, a teaspoon garlic powder, a teaspoon Italian seasoning, 1/2 teaspoon sea salt, and 1/4 of a teaspoon black pepper, and I'm whisking that all up. In this microwave safe dish, I have 1.5 cups of mozzarella cheese, 4 tablespoons of salted butter, and 2 tablespoons cream cheese, which is just about 1 ounce, and I am microwaving that for 1 minute and 30 seconds. Now, my cream cheese was already room temperature, but my butter was cold, and I did that on purpose so that as I'm microwaving it, my butter's not burning up and popping all over the microwave while the rest of it is trying to melt. So I did it for 1 minute and 30 seconds, mixed it, and then, that butter was still having a hard time melting, so I popped it in for another 30 seconds, mixed it up, and then it was a little stringy at the end, so I popped it in one more time for 30 more seconds and mixed it. And now that it's all nice and hot and melty, I'm gonna add my dry ingredients to it. And I do like to take my spoon and mix my dry ingredients into the cheese, butter, and cream mixture really well before I add a large egg, just so it gives it all really time to cool so it doesn't fry my egg when I add it. So here goes the large egg. And then I'm also going to try to mix that in pretty well with my spoon before getting my hands in there. Now, the good thing about this dough combination is I don't even have to oil my hands because it's got the butter added to it. It just really helped it not stick to me. So I got in there and kneaded that together to make sure it's just all nice and smooth and everything is mixed in really well. And then I'm getting a piece of parchment paper, and I'm just going to plop my dough out on top of it. Now, at this point, I usually would cover it with another piece of parchment paper and use a rolling pin to roll it. But again, the way that she does this recipe, adding the butter, which is just a great trick, I felt that I didn't even need to do that. I could actually just kind of mash this out with my hands and get it to the shape that I wanted. So I'm going for about a 9x13 kind of shape. And again, just using my hands to spread the dough, and I didn't have to oil my hands at all. It was great. Now I'm going to add some pizza sauce to this once I get it to the shape that I want. And in her recipe, she calls for 3/4 a cup of pizza sauce. I'm only doing 1/2 cup. So that's going to decrease the amount of carbs in the recipe. And I always just make a huge batch of homemade pizza sauce and I freeze it in 1/2 cup portion sizes. I will try to link the recipe below that I usually use. I just make it in my blender, but you could use whatever low carb pizza sauce that you like or just a straight marinara sauce. And I'm just taking my spoon and spreading that evenly over the whole dough rectangle. And on top of that, I'm adding about 1 cup of shredded mozzarella cheese, and I'm just spreading it over there evenly. And then I'm adding about 4 ounces pepperoni. Now, I did eat a couple of these before I started, and I did use a digital scale to measure them out, but then I ate a couple. So I'd say this is about 3.5 ounces of pepperoni, and it worked pretty perfectly to cover the entire thing with a little bit of overlap. And then on top of that, I'm sprinkling 1/4 cup of shredded Parmesan cheese. And then she calls for another teaspoon of Italian seasoning, but I'm just sprinkling a little bit of extra Italian seasoning because I feel like there's enough seasoning in my pizza sauce and in the dough that I don't really need that much. And then I'm just turning it to the side, and I'm gonna roll it up widthwise so I can get 8 rolls out of it, and I just use the parchment paper to assist me. And another thing that's different from her recipe is that in my experience making anything like this with the pinwheels, it's just easier if you kind of freeze your dough for a little while. So after I get this nice and rolled up, I'm going to place it seam side down and just wrap it back in the parchment and pop it in the freezer 20 minutes. And after I've done that, I'm unrolling it out onto my cutting board. And again, gonna turn it with the seam side down. And I'm just gonna trim off each end so it's kind of even. And then slice this into 8 pieces. And I'm gonna take a cookie sheet also lined with parchment and just arrange these on there evenly. And these also, these pinwheel type recipes also usually spread a little, so you wanna make sure to give them a lot of space in between. And I'm gonna pop that into a 400-degree oven. I cooked mine exactly 25 minutes. Here's what they look like when they come out. And I like mine a little browner and crisper. And here they are plated up. Now, to serve these, I had some cut green beans just kicking around in my freezer that I wanted to get rid of the rest of them because I don't really use them a lot. And I had a little remnant of cream cheese left over. So I took the cream cheese and just mixed it in with a little shredded Parmesan cheese and some Mrs. Dash table blend seasoning to make just a little quick veggie kind of side dish to go with this, because again, I don't have any fresh produce at the moment, with everything still kind of being on lockdown. I just put them in a plastic storage bag in the fridge, and then I just microwave them for 10 seconds, and they made a perfect keto lunch too for the rest of the week. Last up, I threw together just an original recipe of flank steak and broccoli. So to start with, I took 1.5 pounds of sliced flank steak. I cut it against the grain in kind of thin strips, and I just have it in a little bowl, and I'm seasoning it with about 1/4 teaspoon sea salt. Washing my hands, and then probably about 1/4 teaspoon of ground peppercorn. Adding about a tablespoon of avocado oil to my Instant Pot. If you don't have an Instant Pot, you could also do this on top of the stove. And I'm just spreading that so that the bottom of my pot is evenly covered, and I'm turning it to the saute function, and then I'm just adding all of my flank steak to the bottom of it. I'm not really concerned with getting this cooked all the way through right now because I'm just trying to get a good sear on all sides of the steak just to help with the flavor. So I am going to fill it all the way up and totally crowd this pan. You could do this in small batches if you're feeling particular about it, but I wasn't. I was feeling in a hurry to get dinner cooked and have 2 toddlers running all around the house around me while I'm trying to do this. So this is how we did it. And once I got it seared, I just am mixing it to try to get the rest of it seared a little bit. And then I'm just removing it to a separate dish for a moment. And with the pot still on saute, I'm adding 1.5 cups of beef broth to it. And I'm just gonna deglaze the pot by scraping up all of those bits. And I'm adding about a tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. You do want to watch that because of carb content. A teaspoon of minced ginger and a teaspoon of minced garlic, and 1/2 tablespoon of brown swerve. Now I'm adding some of this chili garlic sauce. I'm adding a tablespoon total of it. I will link it down below. I love it. It adds just the right amount of spice and flavor to dishes. I'm adding 1/2 teaspoon of onion powder as well as 1/2 teaspoon of tarragon. I just love the unique taste of tarragon, but you could use something else in place of that or leave it out altogether if you don't have it. And then I'm adding about a tablespoon of sesame oil to that and whisking it all together. Then I'm putting my steak back in and just giving it a good stir so that everything is fully coated. Putting my lid on, and I'm gonna cook this on high pressure, just on the meat setting, for 20 minutes. And then I'm gonna also let it warm natural release for 20 minutes. And here it is after. I'm giving that a little stir, and then I'm gonna sprinkle about 1/4 teaspoon of xanthan gum on the surface and actually bring that back up to a simmer on saute so it can thicken. And then I'm adding a 10.5 ounce bag of frozen broccoli that I lightly steamed in the microwave. And I'm just gonna add that to it, give it a good stir so that it's all coated. I wanted my broccoli to still be firm, so I didn't cook it in the pressure pot. To serve it up, I topped it with a little bit of sesame seeds. And there you have it, super easy. I did use a number of ingredients there, but you can just adjust it however you want. It's a quick weeknight meal and a great way to use flank steak, which is generally a tougher cut of meat, and makes it super duper tender. So there you go, guys. That's this week's Keto Dinner Ideas video, what's for dinner at our house on keto. I hope it gave you some good ideas to do your keto meal prep and meal planning. And if you're new here, please hit the subscribe button and stick around. We'd love to have you join the crew. Comment down below if there are any recipes that you'd like to see us tackle. Somebody asked for fish and chips last week, and so I'm working on that as we speak to get that in a video for her, and also trying to figure out something to replace pork rinds and keto recipes for another subscriber. So please give me your comments down below. I always like to hear feedback from my viewers, and give us a thumbs up if you like what we're doing. It really encourages us. Share it with your friends. Till next time, bye guys.
I had a feeling, but the feeling is all gone.